Welcome to episode 63 of Discourse in Magic with Mark Calabrese. Now, Mark is an incredible card mechanic and full-time performer. In this episode, he explains how he became a full-time performer. He walks us through the behind the scenes for his Wizard Wars performance and his Penn and Teller performance, which is probably the most interesting behind the scenes we've ever heard, ever. And he also chats quite a bit about over-delivering, especially when your method of getting booked is word of mouth. So we learned a ton from this episode, and I'm very, very excited to share Mark with you. I've been following him for a little while, but I met him in New York for the first time a week or two ago when I went to see a few shows. So he was a really, really awesome guy, and I'm very excited to share with you what we learned in the podcast. So without further ado, here it is, episode 63 with Mark Calabrese. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah.
My name is Tyler.
And welcome to a very, very exciting episode. For those of you who've never joined us, Discourse in Magic is a podcast all about getting better at the performance and the business in Magic. So today we're talking to someone who's done a really great job in both of those areas. He's been on Penn and Teller Fool Us. He is an incredible card mechanic, and you might recognize even his hands if you've seen them. He's a full-time magician. He's created magic that's been released on all of the major magic companies. He's had Penguin stuff. He's had Illusionist stuff. He's had, I think he's had stuff on Vanishing Ink. He's all over the place. So I'm sure you've heard of him. I'm very excited to chat with him. And I just spent a couple days with him in New York, which was very, very exciting. Here he is, Mark Calabrese. Mark, how are you?
Hi guys, what's going on?
Doing well. How about you?
Not bad, just living the dream of sitting in my room waiting to do a show later. It's just wait. Hurry up to wait. Basically,
it's funny. It's funny that you say that because we talk. I mean, a lot of this podcast we're talking about all the things that we do, proactively to get business and things like that. But it's also fun to take a note of the fact that, we often work evenings and weekends. So during the day, on a Tuesday afternoon, we can relax and enjoy our day and record a nice podcast and all those fun things.
Yeah, believe me, my girlfriend's a full-time tattoo artist, and her days working is Tuesdays through Saturdays. Right. So when I'm basically, in my underwear, which I currently am right now, she just looks at me with disdain because she has to get up, and she doesn't even have that long of a work day, or that she starts like at one. But that still means that I'm still in my underwear at 2, and she, there's resentment there,
So let's dive into this episode the way that we dive into all of them, which is, how did you get started in Magic?
Well, I got started in Magic. I saw a magician on TV. I was like 8 or 9 years old. I might have been between 8 or 9. I don't really remember much of my childhood. It was very traumatic. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that traumatic. I just have a bad memory. But basically, as a kid, I saw this magician on TV, and it's something I'd never seen before, I guess, at that moment. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, you could do that? And that's all she wrote, And then the next time I saw a magician at a birthday party, how we always see that magician, and I was like, oh my God, this person's real. It's not just on TV. And then from there, I was like, this is what I want to be. I went to college and stuff, but at the same time, I still wanted to pursue magic, and I've been doing it ever since. I started professionally, and I know you can't see me, but I do this with air quotes. I say professionally because I was doing it for money, but it wasn't that good. I started around 15 or 16 and didn't get really, really serious about doing it until I was about 21 years old. I'm not 29 now, so I've been doing it about 10 years full time.
One of the key moments that I like to zone in on is that switch. I mean, so you said you knew from the get-go that it was sort of it, but that period of time when you were just starting to get gigs, I mean, you highlighted that you weren't that good, but you were working. What was that like? How were you getting gigs? What was that process like? 'Cause I know there's a lot of people at home who are in that first step or two, and they're wondering what that means.
Well, my experience was, I think, different than most. But I think at the same time, I just kind of dove right in. I really learned in life, I learn the hard way a lot of the time, and I think it's on purpose. It's not like I'm a stupid person or I just, or I like to get in trouble. But I'd rather learn for myself than to kind of take other people's advice. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to do magic. There were some things in my life that I wanted to do besides magic, but magic just kept always coming back to me. At one point I was going to be a forensic pathologist. Because you watch those forensic shows and those crime shows, and you're like, oh my god, I want to solve those crimes. I want to find a dead body in a swamp and tell you that it, that, what I'm saying. I was just a weird kid. So
I don't know that feeling, but I can understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So basically, the passion that I had for dead bodies and autopsies, someone might have for basketball. That was just my thing. And basically, what would happen was I met a forensic pathologist. I went on like one of these like trips to York, Pennsylvania, and there's a forensic school out there, and I was like, well, I want to meet these people that I want to eventually be when I get older. And these guys are the most boring, unhappy people I've ever met in my life. And they love their job, but they're like, listen, unless if you have no friends and you have no other endeavors, be a forensic pathologist. But I'll tell you right now, it's not as sexy as it looks on TV. It's very much doing a lot of paperwork. Yeah, you get to cut up the body, but unless you have a stomach for that, believe me, getting a date with a girl when they ask you, what do you do? Oh, I hang out with corpses all day. It doesn't really. It's not the easiest in. So I kind of said to myself, well, I might stick to that. Maybe a field in that world. But then I said to myself, no, I love magic. I like to perform. I like being the center of attention. This is something that I've been doing since I was younger, and it's just I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do magic for as long as I can until I need to get a real job. And I have, I'm 29 and I haven't had to get a real job yet. So, I've decided, I figured out a way to do it where I can still make money and income and be happy. So I don't know if that answered the question fully.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things is different people answer it in different ways, and yours was very mindset focused, right? Which is just to say that, other people were doing it, so you could do it too, and you're going to keep doing it as long as you possibly could until you couldn't. It has to do with, going all in and...
drop out of school is what we're saying.
Well, it's funny. It's funny to say that because, like, for example, my dad's side of the family, if you were to look at our dinner table at Thanksgiving, where all the family members are there, I'll explain to you what the dinner table looks like. Let's say my grandfather's at the front. He's a psychologist, and he was also in the Navy. So it's a Navy. My dad is a colonel in the Army currently, so it was a Navy, colonel in the Army, Marine, cop, firefighter, magician, Marine. So it's like literally I'm sitting there like, oh, that's great. You guys are saving lives and making changes. Do you want to see card tricks? And they're like, So, but it's, at the same time, because I look at it as I want to be happy, much less happy and successful, not just successful. Right. I said to myself, I want to look a certain way. I want to act a certain way. And magic has afforded me the opportunity to not have to conform in a certain way and settle. Yeah. I've made some decisions in my life to look a certain way. If you don't know what I look like, I have a good amount of tattoos, and that was a decision. It wasn't like I was a biker or a degenerate or whatever. But I decided to look a certain way, act a certain way, speak a certain way, and magic has allowed me to be
who you are,
artistic.
Essentially, right. It's given you the vessel to
and take identity. Like not all jobs allow your identity to shine through as much as magic does.
Right. So that's basically what my situation is that I decided that I didn't have to make many I didn't have to settle much or make that many compromises in what I do. I can still I make my own schedule. I'm my own boss. And I'm happy, I'm happy. I wake up in the morning, I don't go, shit, I got to do a gig tonight. I get to do a gig tonight,
Yeah.
So.
Which is really what we're all looking for, is to wake up and be, like, excited about the day and not dreading the workload to come. You mentioned on your Penn and Teller episode that you were a fighter at one point. And what I wanted to ask about that was, you seem to be the type of person who... has very serious technical skill and you're very passionate about the things that you care about, but also I think there's sort of a discipline that comes with learning martial arts and magic. And I just sort of wanted to know, do you have a practice regimen? I mean, have the two worlds merged each other? Do you have a system for not only practicing but creating magic, which is something I know you do a lot of?
I've always been an athlete, right? And not that a lot of magicians are nerds, but a lot of them are. You know, we are it's inherently a nerdy kind of culture.
Yeah, you're the only athlete I know. So,
but I guess what I'm saying is, like, you know, our little society, much like allied arts, juggling, clowning. I don't like to put magic in that same department, but it is, you know, allied arts. You know,
for sure.
Even as recently as cardistry and Rubik's cube and anything that uses technical skill or ability or finger manipulation. You know, it's not, you know, you're not hanging out with 6'4", basketball players because they're prioritizing their time with that basketball. You know, I know a few athletes, who are incredible athletes who also like magic. Of course, John Darrenbos was on on America's Got Talent. And he's an NFL football player. You know, for the most part, magic is not a tough guy thing. You know, so I guess what I'm happy that I'm coming from a magic world. I'm coming from a fighting world into magic or kind of overlapping is my lack of taking any bullshit and lack of making any excuses. Like, for example, I've played team sports. I played hockey from 5th grade into my senior year in high school. I played lacrosse. I had a scholarship for lacrosse into college, which I lost because I got into a bad car accident. But so sports have always been really, really high priority in my life. But like in the one-on-one sports like wrestling and mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu, you cannot blame anybody for what happens. You know, if you mess up on the mat, you can't say I missed the pass or my friend missed the pass. I messed up. You know, I didn't practice hard enough. I didn't train hard enough. Those are the excuses those are the excuses that you cannot make in that world. So when I hear magicians say, "Well, I don't do that because this is easier," or "It flies by my audience," you know, it sounds like when a training partner would make an excuse for why he's not training harder than he should be. You know, so I guess what mixed martial arts has done for me, and that it's transferred over into the magic world, is it's forced me to choose the best method, not the easier method. You know,
right.
A lot of guys
don't
will
cut
say,
corners.
there's no corner cutting. You know, and in my life, you know, you always cut corners. You know, you do cut corners, but there's this little bug in the back of my head going, "Don't be a pussy. Stop being don't cut those corners. You know, don't cut those corners." Like, and when you have that in your head, that's the norm of don't cut corners. You might cut a corner here and there, but then you tighten up again. You know, so I think that what is transferred over is, even as a kid, practice has always been something that has forced me to stay sharp when it comes to performing, when it comes to sleight of hand, when it comes to the tricks that I do. I try very hard to not make myself an excuse or make up some excuse and then pass it off as a choice. You know, I hear a lot of magicians go, "Well, this is my style." No, it's not. You haven't been in magic long enough to have a style. You've been in magic 4 or 5 years, 10 years even. You don't have a style. The reason why Daniel Ortiz can get away with his styles is because he's been doing magic. He did every single style. He's perfected many styles, and he decided that this is the style that works best for his audience. Not because he's lazy. Because Daniel Ortiz is as haphazard as he may look, and Leonard Green, as haphazard or as bumbling as they may look, those guys are technically sound and have ability that they've decided to look a certain way and act a certain way. They're not settling. You know, those guys can do a perfect classic pass and great second deals. They just decide to perform that way because it's the character that they've chosen.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a really interesting take, which is just putting the the dedication to doing things the way that they're supposed to be, and why that things are the way, like moves are the best when you do them certain ways, and making sure that you've got good reason. I mean, there's something that I was chatting with, I don't remember who about, but I hope the first step is to have good reason for everything you do in your show. The second step is for all of those reasons to be right, and it's both. Both you have to be good enough to make every single decision that you make a conscious one, and to be able to weigh each of those decisions and remove them based on the results and their quality and how things have played out.
Right.
Let's chat a little bit about your time on Penn and Teller Fool Us. That was I think a particularly great performance on that show. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like it was incredibly Penn and Teller inspired, obviously with the wood chipper and things like that. So tell us a bit about sort of what the creation process was, and how it was to be out on that stage.
Well, when they actually contacted me to be on the show, kind of like it was like a cold call. I really, till this day, I still don't know how they got my information. I'm assuming it's either from Teller, just because I gotten somewhat friendly and I don't want to say we're friends, but I don't want to say that we're acquaintances either. I think that we're a little in between that spot. Where we would talk, when I lived in Vegas, we would talk every now and then and stuff. And I'm thinking that maybe that's how I got that, how that's how they referred to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also did a show before that called Wizard Wars a couple of years before that. So
right.
I might, which Penn and Teller were also on. So maybe that was how I got on there. But
right.
when they contacted me, they asked if I was interested in being on the show, and they asked if I had any material, and I said I have a few ideas, and at the time I just put out a trick called the Seer. I'm sorry. Before that, I'd come out with a trick called DVS, which is essentially the same method as Seer. Seer is just like a volume 2 with better tricks and better methods and just better all around. And I said to myself, oh well, here's an opportunity to promote this trick, because if I do fool them, that's all I need to people will buy it instantly, because if it fooled Penn and Teller, it must be a good thing. But also it was an opportunity to do some great television on a great TV station and work with my idols,
Right.
So when I spoke to the producers, they were like, what's your idea? And I said, well, I have an idea where, you borrow a deck of cards, shuffle the deck, and I could find, the 4 aces. And that was very similar to what Daniel Madison did on the UK version. So I said, so the version that I have, I think it will fool them just because I'm not using any false deals. I'm truly using a borrowed deck. And of course, it doesn't have to be 4 aces. It could be four of any 4 of a kind. In fact, they could choose a 4 of a kind, and I don't even have to know it.
Right.
And that got them interested. And they said, "Well, can you do it with signed cards and stuff?" And I said, "I can do it with any cards. It doesn't matter." So it turned into a thing where I was like, "Okay, well, how do we make this a Vegas style thing? Where
right.
you're in front of 2,000 people. How are you going to make this bigger?" And I said, "Well, okay. Well, one other idea too is not just to find one card, but to find." One card amongst 52, one card amongst 52 decks. That'd be interesting to not only find the deck, but also to find the deck that has the card, and all and just make it astronomically difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, well, what would be your performance of it? I said, well, I would have all the decks of cards on the table, etc. Have the spectator pick a card, sign it, whatever, shuffle it up, cleanly put it back in the deck, and shuffle all the decks into a big bucket. So now we're shuffling 52 cards, So now it's not 1 in 52 chance, it's a 1 in 2,704 chance, right? Shuffle. And then I, blindfolded, of course, I dip into the bucket full of decks, and I start tossing decks over my shoulder. No, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, whatever. And then I go, I think this is the one. Now, even if this is the one, I still have to find the card amongst the 52. Let's hope they get it right. So I deal the cards out, and that was my whole presentation. And they said, well, do we need those cards? I said, no, we could get rid of them. They said, okay, well, what if we do the wood chipper? And I said, well, why not? So it just made it bigger, more dramatic and stuff. And that's how we kind of came to that conclusion of 52 decks with a wood chipper and the whole thing. And yeah.
Had you performed for an audience of that size? Like, not including the TV world, but I just mean being in that room in front of Penn and Teller?
I had been in front of an audience that big, but I performed at colleges, and I performed at orientations at colleges, and those are usually between sometimes 500 people, sometimes 1,000 and 500 people. Depends on how big the auditorium is.
Right.
So I've done rooms that big, but if you watch that, I have a bittersweet taste about Penn and Teller, not because they gave me a great opportunity. I can't knock them at all. But the way the producers kind of made me look is I'd like to think that I'm a funny person, or that I inherently more humorous than how they played me to be on TV. They played me to be a little bit more of a bad boy with a fighting thing and an edge. And I'm from Jersey, so I'm a little tougher. I'm a little rougher on the edges. I do this card thing and whatever,
Right.
Which I'm okay with, but at the same time, I can be that guy, but I'm also funny in the same way. Like if you think I'm not like this Italian mobster guy who's right out of Goodfellas, but like if Goodfellas was were real people, if you took those people out of that movie into the real world, I might be a guy that hangs out with those guys. I don't have an accent, but like I don't look like a Jersey Shore kind of kid, but at the same time I'm a little New York, little New Jersey, and I think my smart ass wise guy attitude kind of relates when you see me perform in front of an audience. That shines, me. I'm kind of a dick, but you like that I'm a dick, So
right.
That didn't really shine through the show, and that's fine, I get it. But I was a little nervous. If you watch that video, I'm a little nervous doing what I'm doing. And also, I'll give you guys a little behind the scenes about that. When that wood chipper, because that wood chipper was remade or like reaccustomed to work without being plugged in. I'm sorry, without gas or without fuel, because that's a fuel powered wood chipper that they actually converted to be electrical, so they can plug it in and use it in their show. So that's Penn and Teller's wood chipper for I think the bunny rabbit trick of theirs. So when they used it, they had to buy a whole new generator for that thing because they didn't, they couldn't plug it in and then the whole lights go out. That would suck. So they had to do that, and also. Because it's electric powered, it's not as strong, right? So they were like, when you toss those cards in there, don't toss them in at 5 or 6 at a time, And I have the technicians telling me that, but I also have the producers saying, we need you to toss in 12 decks at a time, which it doesn't sound like much difference, but once again, if I throw.
Sounds like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like double.
Right, it sounds like double what they want me to put in there. And if the technicians who made these damn things are telling me, put in 5 or 6, and the producers are going, put in 12, it's like, okay, what do I do? And I listen to the producers, right? And I tossed the first 12 I tossed in. All of a sudden, you just hear this thing go crunch, 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 crunch. Stop. And I'm standing there with this wood chipper, not moving, making any sound, not making action. And the whole production goes stop. The director comes out, says stop, and I'm standing there under these hot lights in front of thousands of people. Also, a little more back behind the scenes. Amazing Jonathan and Tom Mullica are sitting in the audience as well, and I just happened to see them right before I put my blindfold on, because I'm just looking through the audience and I see this guy with red hair and this guy with a bandana. I'm like, holy shit! My two idols sitting maybe 50 feet away from me. I'm not gonna shit my pants. I hope not. So now I'm nervous. On top of that, and now this thing stops, and now it took them 25 minutes to fix this thing and to take out whatever. The card crap was. So I'm sitting there. What my set was supposed to be 7 minutes at most. Mine was 28 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So they basically freeze me. They stop me, and then they start me again. And so they cut it to make it look like it was fast. But I was on that stage for a good 25 minutes. It was
my goodness.
Yeah. So of not doing anything. So to add more to my nervousness, that was also a part of it too, but yeah, that's how I felt when I performed that. If you give me, you can put me in a stadium full of 1 million people, I don't care, because I'll never see them again, and I'll perform well. But there was just the right, the planets aligned of, oh yeah, Penn and Teller's watching, oh yeah, you're on TV, oh yeah, Tom Mullica and Amazing Jonathan are in the audience, oh yeah,
and you broke the wood chipper,
and oh yeah, and I can't afford to fix whatever the hell that thing cost,
right?
So yeah, But yeah, at the end of the day, I was happy with it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, as much as there's a little bit of sourness about how they edited together to make you look more of a bad boy than you would have wanted, they also edited together it to look like it didn't destroy a wood chipper for 25 minutes and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I got to be thankful for the things that did happen versus the things that didn't happen. So what I will say is, I was happy with the experience, and I would do it again. Nothing went down that I was like, oh, I'll never do this again. The fact that I didn't fool them, I didn't expect to fool them, just because when I first met Penn and Teller, this was in 2012. Towards the end of 2012, I went to go see the show, and Teller invited me backstage, and I hung out with, in the monkey room with them, and he goes, show me some magic. And I was like, oh my God. So the first thing I did was I showed him some tricks using my method, the DVS method. And he was fooled. He's like, I have no idea how that works, and I have no idea what you did. You fooled me. I'm amazed, And I was like, oh my God, that's the best quote I could ever get from Teller, Of course, first thing I did was like, well, can I show you how it works? And they're like, of course, show us how it works. So
little did you know you were going to need that.
Yeah, little did I know. 2 or 3 years later, I was going to have to perform in front of them using the same method. Once again, I went in, assuming I'm not going to fool them, but it'd be nice to be on TV. And if I do, great. If I don't, who cares?
Right. That's awesome. That's a really interesting edge to the story that I had no idea about, and it sort of reminds us all how much of the TV magic, makes the magic that we do go together. And like when I say TV magic, I mean everything from editing to building you a wood chipper to, the story that goes behind how they could have known, the method based on you showing them in the back room 3 years earlier.
Right.
So it's funny that there's so much context to just someone appearing on a stage on a what will end up being a 6-minute clip on an episode of Fool Us. There's such depth and context and like magical history and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, believe me, there's way more than people know. But once again, like at the end of the day, if you even hear the story of why Penn and Teller Fool Us even came to fruition, it takes a little bit of the sting off of you not fooling them, because you know what? Think of it this way: Matt King didn't fool him. Ben Seidman didn't fool him. There's so many big names that I look up to that didn't fool him. That I don't even care if I fool them or not, just because once again, no one even remembers that it's a fool them, non-fool them aspect.
Exactly.
And the only reason why the fool us aspect was even part of the show was because when Penn and Teller pitched the show idea to the TV shows, the first thing they said was, "We just want to have a TV show where we show off magicians." And they're like, "Well, we already got, world's greatest magician." And they're like, well, okay, well, what if we make it a competition? And as soon as they heard that, they're like, ooh, America's Got Talent's a good, that's got ratings. So this will, so the only reason why the Fool Us aspect even came was because they needed a hook to make the TV producers want to buy the show. And then if you notice, they were like, oh yeah, and we'll also try to figure out how it's done. They got to fool us. And then now it's got the mixture of like secrets revealed, America's Got Talent, and World's Greatest Magic all combined. And then when you find out that you're not learning a damn thing, you're just hearing magicians talk about stuff, which is also weird. It's entertaining as well, because when you hear stuff like, what, turtles? What is he talking about?
Yeah, it's exactly. That's the one that always comes to my mind. I'm like,
every
that
day
was so good.
I was getting a phone call from someone like, hey, Mark, what does he mean by turtles? And I'm like, don't worry about it. What does he mean by this? And it's like, none of your business. Be a magician.
Yeah, exactly.
So
let's talk a little bit about. Let's get away from shredder mechanics and into playing card mechanics, and talk a little bit about. I know that's sort of your a lot of your specialty and a lot of your background. So all the things that, or most of the things that you've released have been playing card centric. How did you dive into the playing card area? Why do you like it? And sort of like, I don't know, like where do you stand in the world of card mechanics?
Well, I mean, I got into card magic because it was, I think, like the first thing that you kind of learn as a kid is, maybe a card trick here and there. Because one, if you're not a rich kid, cards are cheap, right? There really was never no real magic shops around me, and I couldn't just go I couldn't just go to Tannen's or something. So, I would go to the library. I would steal I wouldn't borrow it. I would steal the books from the library. Card magic books. I think I started looking at Expert at the Card Table when I was like 10, because you go to Barnes and Nobles and they have the Dover editions of Expert Card Unique, Buckley's Card Control, and Expert at the Card Table. And those are like, all right, well, I guess I'll buy these books. My mom would buy them for me, and those are the books that I got into. Royal Road, I didn't buy it because I didn't like the cover. Funny enough, but the other books I was interested in. And those were like, it was tough because they read, those tricks read like stereo instructions. They're not like sexy. They're not fun. Like a Tyler Wilson book, I like to read just to read it because it's funny.
It's amazing. Yeah,
right.
It's entertaining and educational at the same time.
Right, and that's how I mean that's when I teach somebody something, I try to be entertaining as well as educational. And reading certain books, you're reading it and you're like, I'd rather watch paint dry than read these books. So but those are the books that I got into when I was a kid, and that's the magic that I kind of like knew about. And then when David Blaine got on the scene, I might have been 12 or 13, maybe. I don't know how old I was. I mean, I could do the math, but I think it was like 12 or 13, and that's when I was like, oh man, this is some cool stuff. And then that's when I started buying. My dad lives in Long Island, and there was a magic shop in Long Island, and he took me a few times, and those guys there were like, oh, you should. This is the cassettes you should buy. Or at the time they were making the transfer over to DVDs and cassettes, so I bought some of those, and that's where I kind of learned. From Michael Lamar and Daryl's, all those videos, and that's kind of like where I got into mostly the card stuff. The coin stuff, I didn't really get into coin stuff until I met a coin magician or a guy who got into coin magic at a later date. I might have been 15 or 16, and somebody did a muscle pass for me, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And then
it's the only coin thing I can do, and it's not a magic trick. It really bothers me. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because once again, like coin magic is a just different animal altogether, and if it's I don't want to say it's less rewarding because done well, it's beautiful, but at the same time. Card magic, it's so easy to just, you don't have to even do a good double lift and you can still do some good stuff. With coin magic, if you can't do good coin magic, like there's no bad coin magic if you want to be a coin magician, you
it's
have
just
to be
not
good.
fooling.
It's just not right. It's just like, all right, well, it's in the other hand,
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and I think I feel a little dirtier sometimes when I was younger doing coin magic because it's like, well, I can't palm this coin well.
Yeah.
And I look like I have palsy in my right hand. But I guess I adapt. I was more card centric because it was something that it's what I started off with, But then when I was around 14 or 15, I met Gazzo, the street performer, and he's the one that kind of got me into doing other stuff, obviously the cups and more cabaret or stand up style magic,
Right.
But yeah, I think in the world of card magic, I kind of misappropriated my time practicing when I was a kid. Like, I always wanted to learn a good bottom deal and a good second deal and all these tough moves. But a lot of those moves require people to kind of show you how things should look. And once again, if you have a book, and the book's doesn't have moving pages, so you just see what this looks like. If you even read the write up on on the bottom deal in the expert the card table, it's you have to see it done, for it to make sense, So I didn't really get into the heavier stuff until I got a little older. And even now, at 29 years old, I'd like to say that I'm pretty, well versed in sleight of hand. But at the same time, I still practice every day. I'm still practicing constantly, just keep myself sharp. And I try to learn new things every day, But as a worker, you got to use, you only really practice stuff that you're going to use, So
you use what works as a worker. Like that's right. The point of being a worker.
Yeah, and not only stuff that works, but also stuff that I know I'm going to use. So if that's a diagonal palm shift or a classic pass or whatever, I use a diagonal palm shift in my close up work. Like I don't just say that I use it, or I don't just like a lot of magicians I know they do it to show that they can do it. Like what's the point of learning a diagonal palm shift just so you can show the magicians you can do a diagonal palm shift? You know what I mean? If you can do a diagonal palm shift. Use it to, palm the card out and then, go into your left pocket. So it's like I use what I know is good and the most efficient, and the best looking stuff, So yeah, that's kind of like.
How do you go about booking a gig? Because we just Googled for your website to look at it, and as far as we know, it doesn't exist. So how does one? And you don't have to share your in-depth secrets, obviously, but I mean, what's your process?
So I will say this: my website is markcalabrese.com, and it doesn't pop up first because it just kind of like,
I guess Illusionist has more hits.
Yeah. Your name is too big outside of it. Okay, wow, beautiful website.
So it's not, it's not great. It's a glorified business card in my opinion, and I just use it so that when someone gets my business card, they go, oh, he has a website. He's not just some schmuck, But yeah, you can also see videos, and I haven't updated it in a while, just because actually Daniel Madison is my web guy for that, and I just we talk too much about crap, and I forget to say, hey, can you put this up for me, But I'm gonna try to change that because I need to be more on that, especially as it's my business. But the majority of my work that I get is from word of mouth, It's from other people going, I saw you at this thing, and my friend said you were great, and I want to know if you can do the same thing you did at his party at my party. Or someone sees me at a party and goes, hey, I saw you at that gig at the party, and I want to know if you can do that at my party. And that's just basically what how I get those gigs. And
I think people who book on word of mouth, it says a lot about their quality, because it's not, it might not necessarily be a marketing system, but it's a lot of people just being like, yeah, we booked him, you should book him too. Like, he was amazing.
You just bring top-notch magic, and then that will get you more gigs.
Well, that's kind of like the whole goal, is that I try very hard to over-deliver, and undersell myself and over-deliver. And a lot of magicians I know, they use certain websites, Gig Masters and this and that or whatever. And I know that, for example, I could get on that and, get consistent work and be busy every single week and never have a day off, but like, I'd rather work smart than work hard,
exactly.
Right. It's not like I enjoy my Tuesdays, until a certain hour to be free, I know it's which comes first, the chicken or the egg, how do I get the gig to get the gig, but the way I get those gigs, restaurants and certainly like that is just, you have to get yourself out there. People don't know what you're selling if they don't know what you're selling, it sounds stupid, but if you go to a restaurant and you do magic at a restaurant or at a bar, people are aware that you do this stuff, and then if the right people see it, sometimes it is a mixture of luck and a mixture of business sense, but at the same time, like the restaurants that I've been doing, I got them through one restaurant I got through a magician friend who needed coverage, and him and I traded off forever. Another restaurant that I got because a guy who's a manager there, his sister is friends with the girl I used to date, and I showed him magic one day. He goes, hey, my boss is looking for a magician. Can I give him your number? And I said, please do. And then she called me, and that's all she wrote. On Fridays and Saturdays when I don't have an outside gig, I perform at a comedy club in Rockland County, New York. It's called Levity Live, and they have huge names. Like George Lopez will be there in a couple of weeks, and they had Chris Tucker, Chris Rock has been there, Kevin Hart has been there. All big names, always big names. And I'm on Fridays and Saturdays. I do stand up magic before the show, or I do walk around and stand up magic. And sometimes I'll open up for comedians, So if you go on my Instagram, you'll see comedians that I've opened up for, Mike Epps and stuff, and I do 10, 15 minutes before them, and that's that's how I get some gigs. So I do that, and they don't pay great, like I might leave that I might leave that the comedy club for about the same that I'm leaving, most restaurants. But the thing is, I'm getting views from people that would never see me otherwise, and those people are doing 2 shows a night, 400 people at a time. So I'm getting in front of 400 people twice a night, and that's all. And I don't have to even do the gig. If I say, listen, hey, I have another gig on Saturday, that there's no like I've made it so that my relationship with them is they will always want me. But if I have another gig, as long as I let them know within about a week in advance, they don't have a problem with it,
So tell us a little bit about your time on Wizard Wars. That's sort of one of those shows where sort of the magicians fell in love with it, but I guess there wasn't that much of a love. Oh my goodness, I guess from the layman community. What was your experience like on that show? It seems like it was less extreme. I can only imagine than the mayhem that happened on Fool Us.
What I will say about Wizard Wars is I could not have gotten. I don't think I could have gotten onto Fool Us without Wizard Wars. So for that, I'm grateful. The show itself, it was cool for what it was, and it's a nice thing to have on my resume. I worked on the Sci-Fi Channel, but at the same time, it is something that I don't like to talk too much about just because my experience that I had with them, that I had in that show was to be desired. The idea was a great idea, and it was on paper it's good. On paper it looked good, and execution wise, I think it could have been done a little bit better. Which is why it only lasted 1.5 seasons or whatever. It's a cool idea, but once again, it's tough for that show to sell again and again and again. Also, what I will say is that my me getting on that show, I was supposed to have a different partner, and the only reason why I was who I was partners with was because we were both from New Jersey, and they were trying to do some kind of we're both from Jersey kind of thing. I think Chris Ramsey and Spidey were together because they're both from Canada. So it's so who gives a shit about chemistry? Who gives a shit about technique and ability? Oh, you're both from the same area. Let's do that. It was a little one dimensional. And on top of it, the ideas that I had for the show, a lot of them, what would happen was a lot of them weren't used because a lot of other magicians had priority over the ideas, which to me is kind of bullshit. If I'm supposed to compete against you and I go, here's an idea and you have an idea, I get it. For TV, you can't have the same guy do the same thing. But there was ideas that I had, and they were like, oh yeah, you can't do that because one of the wizards are doing it, and I'm like, oh okay, well, so you're kind of leaving us, you're kind of leaving us to have kind of the last possible idea.
Yeah, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel right now.
Right, because if I say to you, if I say to you, Jonah, I'm going to give you a cell phone and a balloon. You have to do magic with those two things. The first thing you might think of is cell phone and balloon. Because that's the most visual, most cool thing. I don't know, and I'm not even gonna ask you what your second idea is, but you would have to think. What I ended up doing with the balloon and the cell phone was basically my fourth or fifth idea, because the first and second idea I wasn't allowed to use,
Right.
So that was kind of sucky. Also, I didn't even know what I was allowed to do on the stage until maybe 10 minutes before I got on the stage. So, I didn't even know we were able to use trapdoors. I didn't know trapdoors existed in that show until 10 minutes before I was supposed to get on stage, and they were like, I was like, what are they doing over there? He goes, oh, they're building a trapdoor for somebody. And I'm like, wait a minute, we were allowed to use trapdoors? What the fuck? It's almost like I would say this, if you are just getting into TV production, Wizard Wars might be your first thing you got onto, and Foolus might be your fifth thing after you had some experience. When it comes to production and directors and stuff. So it was fun to be on, but given a different partner, not for nothing. The guy that I was with, his name is John Stessel. He's a great guy, but at the same time, his experience with performing in front of people were his buddies at college, so he had never been on a real stage, and for that matter, been in front of Penn and Teller, and other big magicians, much less, in front of a bunch of strangers. So it was that, and I had experience, and I wasn't even nervous that day. It was just more it's tough already being a performer on your own, much less having to be a performer with somebody who you've never worked with in your life, paying what they paid. And that's also where it comes from me. I just over deliver. If they're hiring me for an hour, I do an hour and 20, an hour and 30 sometimes, because I'd rather them remember that than to say I was there for 59 minutes and 59 seconds.
And for what we do, over delivering is so easy. That when we think about, it's just being there for half an hour longer, right? Doing 2 more tricks, spending some extra time with the one person at the special event who really, really loves what you do and wants to chat with you for a couple minutes. You know what I mean? There's so many different things that we can do that go the extra mile, and it goes a long way in things especially word of mouth, when most of your bookings are through word of mouth, being genuine, being kind, doing the right thing is always the best answer. It's always the right thing.
Oh, believe me, because all I really have to sell is my time and what I'm doing in that time. Mm-hmm. And I guess what I'm saying is that how many times have you been at a bar hanging out with friends? Maybe you're trying to impress a girl you're trying to date, or you're just hanging out with your buddies, and you're doing the magic anyway because you want to have fun, or you want to practice, or whatever the reason is.
Yeah, exactly.
technically, I'm just giving away what I just did for free,
Right.
you know? So when your mother makes you dinner, she could charge somebody something, you know, a certain amount for that, but she's not because she's your mom and she loves you, right?
Right.
You know? So it's all a matter of to who and to why. You know, you're a client, you're a friend, you're my, you know, if my mother wanted me to do a gig, to perform at a party that she's throwing, my mom has to just make me my favorite, you know, food.
Right.
That's all she's got to do.
course.
And even if she doesn't,
That's
I'll still
still
do the
fine.
magic,
Right.
you know? So when I'm at a gig and I'm hired for 2 or 3 hours, you know, I make sure that, I guess, I don't know if this is different than most people, but like, let's say someone hires me for an hour, and in that hour, I have to perform for 60 people, you know, and you know, this happens to every working magician. What will happen is they'll do a gig, and some tables are more enthusiastic than others. And of course, you as a performer, you want to perform for the people that want to see you work.
course.
So you might do, if you have 60 people you got to perform for, and you have an hour to do it, that might mean 20 minutes per table, you know, maybe 20 minutes per table, maybe 15 minutes per table. But some tables might go 25 minutes, might go 30 minutes, and now you have less time to perform for the rest of the people. I know magicians who are like, listen, I'm here for an hour, and whatever they get is whatever they get for that hour.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not that way. I'd rather make sure all 60 people see magic, and I give myself that hour to do that. And if the hour's up and I haven't hit 2 tables, I'm not leaving. Those 2 tables have to see that magic, because what ends up happening is, I don't know who's sitting at that table. That guy could be a millionaire, a secret millionaire, and he might want me for his gig. And just because sorry, it's 3:59. I gotta get here at 4. I got out of here at 4. I'm not that guy, you know. Unless I have a gig like it's an hour away and I have to give myself time. Once again, that means I just tighten everything up, because I know that I have to leave to get to another place, and I'm short for time. But if I don't have another gig after that, sometimes I forget. Sometimes I just keep going until, all right, everyone saw the magic. I think I'm good, you know.
And something on that note is we interviewed Brian Miller a little while ago, who was talking about restaurant magic, and one of the things that he said, which has been ringing in my head as true since I heard it, is whenever you're doing restaurant or walk around magic, you know, it's like people are paying you to advertise for yourself. And it's funny that, and what you just said, which is that, like, I'm not going to forget about a table because there might be a secret millionaire there, or there might be my next gig hiding there. And if you have the mentality that you are a magician of word of mouth, and I don't know if you go into your gigs with that mentality, but I'm just saying, like, having the mentality of knowing that your next gig is in the hands of the people who you perform for, right? Like, every audience is also your next buyer. Then it gives a new twist to how long afterwards you stay, and how you really connect with people and deliver with people and things like that, because those are the people that are going to be hiring you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the truth is that if you don't, how do I expect you to buy something? How do I expect you to buy something if you don't know what it is, and you don't know if it's available, you know? And of course, you know, you might be tired because you've done 3 gigs in the past 2 days or past day or 2 or whatever, and you just want to get home because you're done or whatever. But, you know, to me, my job isn't done after I stop performing. My job is done when I'm in my car driving home, you know? And it's one thing that even as a full-time performer, my job, like my girlfriend, when she gets home from work, she doesn't want to talk about tattooing. You know, she's a tattoo artist, and she's been doing it for a long time, and she's an artist, and she's great, and she's amazing, and she loves what she does, you know. But at the same time, when she gets home, she doesn't want to talk about much of it, because she leaves it there. Where in my world, like right now, I'm working right now. I'm working. This is working, even though it's fun and we're talking, we're having a good time. This is a part of my job, because people are asking what I'm doing, you know, and people need to know this information, and I'd rather them know it from me and hear the right thing versus the wrong thing from somebody else.
So now that we're nearing the end of the episode, there's a couple of different things we do. Usually there's 2, but there's a 3rd segment that I wanted to add. So we'll start with that new segment.
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. It's a fun little thing. So I thought, you know, every time we find new people on the podcast, just because we're like, this would be a really cool magician. But what I thought would be cool is to start an endless chain. So I was wondering, is there one magician who you would recommend for us to have on the podcast? Ideally, someone who you can then say, he's a friend of mine, here is his email, secret contact info. So is there a person, it's totally okay if you say no, but is there a person who you think would be the coolest person to have on a podcast?
So what I will say is, I have a lot of friends in magic. Okay, correction. I know a lot of people in Magic, but not a lot of them are friends. You know, not a lot of them are friends. And for example, Jonah, when I met you, it was because of Ben Train who hit me up saying that you guys were going to be in town. You know, and I consider Ben a friend, even though I don't get to see the guy too often. I consider him a friend because when he is around, he calls and says, "Hey, listen, I'm around. I want to hang out, whatever." You know, versus some people that I could see every day in the city and they don't hit me up because, you know, either they're not that close with me or they take advantage of the fact that I live so close to them, you know. But what I will say is the one person who I do talk to all the time about Magic and just, you know, kind of bouncing off ideas, and also he's someone who has a better understanding of the marketing of Magic than I do. He had a Penguin Magic lecture, and a lot of it had to do with just marketing alone, marketing yourself as a magician. His name is David Casero. He's from New Jersey, and he's actually I actually met him I was 17, I think, and I was doing a gig for HSBC, a bank. You know, it was a you know, a cocktail party kind of thing for people at a bank, and he was the other magician at the party, and I was doing, I think at the time I was doing some really sleight of hand heavy things, but it was lacking a lot of presentation, where David at the time was not doing much that was technically demanding, but hell, that guy was getting crazy reactions. People were loving what he was doing, and they were entertained. And he might have done a double lift as his most difficult sleight, you know. So when he met me and we were talking, you know, he's the one who got me like into the idea of, well, maybe you should work on your performances and stuff, you know. And once again, I come from a world in the mixed martial arts where, you know, there's no sugarcoating. You know, if something sucks, they don't go, "Oh, that's not bad." Yeah. They go, "That was bad. You're not," you know. And you also learn the hard way if it's bad. Right. If you punch someone that way, you're gonna get punched harder back, and you know. So he was, in a nice way, like, telling me I should work on some things, and I was like, "Listen, Dave, if you want to tell me what you think, tell me. I'm not gonna be offended. You can tell me whatever." And he didn't lay into me, but he was basically like, "All right, well, this is the truth. This is work. And I was like, "Oh my God, please tell me more," because I took it as like the only magician that I knew who was not like afraid to tell me this stuff. And then he introduced me to some magicians who also were like that same way, and those are like my close, tight knit group of magicians. So David Casero is a magician who you should look up. He did a Penguin lecture. He has a few products out, I believe. But he's a great thinker, and also, especially in the same vein as this podcast, when it comes to the business of Magic and it comes to learning about, you know, how to promote yourself, he knows more than I do. I put it this way: I go to him when I need help or advice when it comes to getting better gigs and stuff. He's a magician, but he's also he works for a marketing company. So
oh wow, okay,
there you go.
So one of the other things that we do when we wrap up the episode is we each go and we mention something from the episode. I mean, we've been talking for about an hour that we think is particularly valuable, something that's a take-home point for the episode. For me, one of the things that was just a real highlight for me was you describing the finer details of what happened on Penn and Teller Fool Us. You know, we had a little while ago Sean Farquhar describe the finer details of his episode, and that was just awesome. You know, he was reading into, like, even the looks that he was being given by Penn and Teller and when they happened. But I think this might take the cake for, added information that no one would have ever known. There was a 20-minute freeze in time. Your idols in Magic were in the front. There was all this crazy stuff. So to me, I think that was incredibly interesting. And I think that for people at home, that should go so much as to tell you that there's a lot that goes into TV, and you know it's great to be it's great and very cool to be a part of it. Tyler, is there something special that you took from the episode?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that also, as per every week, but different point actually. The point was everything went, or not everything. The one big thing went wrong in the beginning of that, and it was edited to look a specific way, and you know, it wasn't 100% the performance that happened, but it still looked incredible. So my take home from that is, like, you can do shoddy performances and produce a great promo video. Not that you should be, you know, doing shoddy performances, but if you are shooting a promo video and something goes wrong, you don't have to, you know, scrap everything. There's so much hope for post-production when it comes to material like that.
The best stuff is the stuff that'll make post-production.
Yeah, exactly.
And Mark, for you, what was maybe one take-home point to people at home who've been listening, maybe driving their cars, doing crazy stuff for the last hour or so that they can take from this?
I think what you could take from this is get readies are for pussies, and if you want to be a good magician, make magic the number one priority, not the money. Because if you're looking to get into magic to get rich quickly, it's the wrong business. Magic. If I didn't love magic, I wouldn't be able to do it the way I do it. And it's not a grind, but if you didn't love it, it would be a grind. So I think that if you're looking to get into magic, seriously get into magic, and look into getting into it as a form of income, speak to yourself and be honest with yourself. Do I love magic enough that I can do it even when I don't want to do it? Because there are days where I don't want to get up because maybe I've had a bad day with my girlfriend or because something happened in my personal life. I still got to put a smile on and perform, and that is very different because I can't just get in front of people and go pick a fucking card because they'll look at you like you're crazy. You got to still be entertaining and smile and charismatic, even if your personal life might be being bad. So.
And to close, the last thing that we do is we offer you an opportunity. There's probably millions of magicians at home listening to this, and you have an opportunity.
You're the first guest.
Yeah,
to
no
laugh
one
at
laughs.
That joke.
No one ever laughs.
It happens in every episode.
They all just go straight
Finally.
faced. God damn it. Okay. So, anyways, there's people listening at home. Who knows how many? Maybe tens of people. And
Ben Train is definitely listening.
I wouldn't be sure of that. Anyways, you have their ears. Is there anything you want to tell them? Most likely, it's mostly magicians. But is there anything that you want to tell them aside from get ready for pussies?
And it can be anything. It's not something. It could be for them or about you. If you have shows and events coming up,
promote something.
Just
anything.
Shameless plugs of whatever you want.
Yeah, just follow me on Instagram, MagicMark52. I'm still, some interesting stuff is coming out this year for, some products that I'm putting out with Penguin Magic, and a new download with Illusionist is coming out soon, and then some interesting projects on the way. I'm actually shooting with Cosmo from Cosmo's Magic tomorrow. Actually, some things for them. So I have some things lined up, but just as I said, if you follow me, you'll keep in tune, and mostly just take everything that I have said and realize that it's it worked for me. It may not work for you, and if you don't agree with what I say, that's fine. You're entitled to your wrong opinion. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for this. I thought it was a really, really awesome episode, and I think everyone at home is going to have both a lot of interesting stuff to think about and someone new to explore and sort of get ready for all of the tsunami of magic that's coming at them from you. So thank you so much for the episode, and of course, thank you to everybody at home for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Take care.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye.
Well, there you have it, episode 63. Thank you so much for being a part of it. This podcast show spreads through only word of mouth. There are no ads, there's no billboards, there's nothing like that. It's only word of mouth. So if you liked this episode or if you liked another episode, it would mean the world if you would share it. Whether you share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, which somebody did, which really made a huge difference. And really anywhere, wherever you like to share it, even if you like to just share it with magic friends that you talk to, it would mean the world. So thank you in advance for that. That is how the podcast grows. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next Thursday. Later.